allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'll fill in. So let's start with a roll call.
Newberry.
Here.
Crowner.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Lees.
Here.
Young.
Here.
I need a motion to perfect and approve the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Motion with support. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. And we'll move on to the consent agenda, which entails 8 items. Minutes from the regular council meeting on August 16th. Approve a request to change the date of the second council meeting from the September 20th to the 27th. Approve payment to French Reniker Associates. Approve payment to Snyder Associates. Approve payment to Bonsack and Frommelt LLP for our auditing services. Payment to Dell Technology for budgeted desk computers. Approve the clerk's financial report for August. And approve the payment of claims for the expense in the amount of $385,860.79.
Motion to approve. Support.
Motion with support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Moving right along, we'll go on to the council and staff reports, and we'll start with our city administrator, Mr. Monsager.
Good evening. Thank you. Just a couple quick items. Purple Heart City, I indicated that in our update. We'll be bringing that forward for council consideration. Burlington's doing the same thing. It doesn't recognize individuals, but it does recognize that we support those efforts. I don't have a resolution yet, but I should be getting that. I'll send that to council as soon as I have it. The only cost to the city is the signage. I don't know exactly where yet or how many. I'm assuming there'll be probably 2 at a minimum. The signs are about $250, but that's our biggest expense. But I thought it was kind of a cool idea. I'll get that out to you as soon as possible. CIP, you'll have that, a shared inbox. I can print it out if you need one. Otherwise, you'll get a OneDrive shared folder from me. If you need a paper one, raise your hand. You need, okay. I thought maybe.
Yep.
Otherwise, you'll get that in your folder. We'll get that set up. Stormwater, Mike's been doing a lot of work on stormwater, and we've been doing some mapping as well. We've identified we've identified a number of issues, and we'll be putting together a meeting with county conservation, Burlington, West Burlington. Hopefully the railroad will attend that meeting as well. A lot of work's gotten done out there, and several issues identified as contributing factors to that problem, but it's going to take a number of folks cooperating to get that done and looking for some funding to get that done as well. I'll be bringing the stormwater master plan, actually probably a smaller planning effort forward that will then allow us to do a notice of intent, which is to apply for funding for the larger planning effort as well, but also give us some ideas for lures. That'll be coming forward ASAP as well. Just the rain event that we had, real quick, thought I'd touch on it. We had only one complaint in West Burlington, a number in Burlington. We got hit a little bit differently. It was an odd storm. Our system and lift stations were not overloaded. They were running at probably at capacity or close there too, but we were not overloaded in West Burlington. You cannot simply go in and put a 60-inch or 72-inch stormwater pipe down every street in town and redo the streets. You just simply can't afford it. We are, as we've talked before, focusing on about 5 different areas of where we can deal with stormwater above ground. It's already helped, as you know, at the mall detention pond that we took over. We've already talked to Phoenix investors about working with us on their site over here. Obviously, we're working on lures. It's already helping where DOT's doing the work that we asked them to do behind Kimberly. So we've been focusing on those above ground efforts. And then the other thing that we'll like to be bringing forward are changes to our ordinance to affect hard surfacing of large lots, for example, where you can do things so that you treat the water local or allow the water to absorb at the site rather than heading directly off site. So just wanted to do a brief update on stormwater because we've been talking about it, but this last one was a very odd storm, anywhere from 1.5, 3 inches to up to 8 inches around town. Very spotty. So that's all. Thank you.
Greg, how many Purple Hearts do we have in West
The
Burlington?
email said that we had 3.
3? And how far back does that go? Forever? I mean,
I don't know. I don't have any of those details. One of the gentlemen was probably that I met with was, I shouldn't guess his age, but I would say at least Vietnam. I know at a minimum.
I think it's a good honoring thing.
Yep.
Anything else for Greg? We'll move on to Public Works. Mike?
Just to add with Greg on the stormwater, I do have a meeting scheduled. We have a inspector for the BNSF set up appointment with me. They've been working with me good, trying to figure this out. Next Tuesday, they'll be here. We'll be pumping down the water hole on the outfall pipe of the tracks so they can actually send someone under the tracks and inspect the culvert, check diameter and size, and see if any of these issues apply to them. Finally, over years of work before me, we have got a couple people that are meeting with me and doing meetings, and we're scheduled to pump that down next Tuesday. And he'll be here on Wednesday to do the inspection. Chris Lees, just want to give a thanks out to him with the County Conservation. He's been working with me really good on this and trying to resolve this too on his end. He's responsible for that lake over there. So a lot of silt problems and things going on. So hopefully we get this inspection done. We'll move on to the next thing. And like Greg said, we'll have a meeting with all the entities and everybody involved and trying to get a plan made on how we're going to resolve this problem. That's all I got.
Anybody have questions for Mike? No? We'll go on to the police department, and our chief, Jesse's here.
I spoke with Allie. She works at ads in Burlington. We're going to do for Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd through the 31st. We're going to have they're going to have several things going on at both the high school and the elementary school this year. Dress up days for the elementary school. They're also going to partake in decorating the doors of their classroom, and then the police department's going to go in Thursday night, and we're going to judge the doors, and then the winning class is going to have a pizza party held for their class for winning the decorating the classroom doors. Middle school, high school, they're going to decorate the lockers, and they got some gift cards from Fun City that they'll give out to the winners for junior high and then the winners for the high school. We're going to participate in judging that also on Thursday. Friday, we're going to do a school assembly at the high school where we did a presentation a couple years ago. We're going to do it again, just giving some facts, about 15 minutes worth of information, just the high school kids, let them know the drugs out there, how dangerous they are, the health effects, and go with that on that. So we have not done the Red Ribbon Parade for several years now. This is kind of I think overtaken. The Red Ribbon Parade is getting more focus on in the school. So I was working with Allie at ads with that. So we'll be pretty involved with them for that week there in October. So that's on the police department side.
And then you have anything on the fire?
Again, we had another busy month of August. We had 62 calls for service, which brings us up to 400. As of today, we're up to 473 calls for this year. Everything's going pretty well up there. Getting situated and working on a few things that we have in this year's budget. And one of the big ones that I'm getting ready to work on is replacing the generator up there at the fire department. The one we have can run, but it has to be manually started with somebody, and we basically have to babysit it while it runs because of the shape that it's in. So somebody, basically what we'll do is start it, get it running, open the doors, and then we have to shut it off, and then, which does not help us out for power at the station, but at least we can get the trucks out. So we're working on quotes for a new generator.
Alex, do you have any breakdown on the 473 calls?
I don't have,
How many's in the city? versus
I'll get that pulled up for you.
town?
I'm gonna say 85% of them are med calls, which are all within the city. Fire calls, I'll look. I would probably say less than 15 to 20 calls for service for outside the city limits this year. But I'll get the numbers for you and I'll let you know.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Kelly?
I'll just let everybody know that we're going to be sending out an invitation for our community visioning grant that we've been working with Trees Forever and the Iowa State University and the DOT on. It's a transportation enhancement program, and we have, the committee has worked with the community to design 3 projects, and they're going to present those projects on Thursday, the 28th, from 5 to 7 at the Homestead 1839 in their barn there. They're going to open that up to us, and they're going to do some tours of what they have going on there, and then we'll kind of go through the whole process that we've been through with the community visioning group to get to the projects that we have today. So.
Fresh hot cookies left over from the pool. Tested them today. They were actually very good.
Oh, now I really want to go.
Absolutely. Over here is also a map of a very large map of the trail. I plan on hanging it up, but I plan on taking it out to the community visiting session first. So.
Greg, did you have anything to report on with the building department or anything?
Mark gave me some numbers I was going to include in the update tomorrow, but really focusing on building permits. There's been a number that he's reached out to that didn't have permits, so we're focusing on getting those done as well. And started working on nuisances and getting some good compliance on those as well. But stopping, talking to folks, and getting building permits. There's a few folks that are going to go back and get some that they needed to have done as well. A lot of them aren't costly items, but they simply need to get these permits done. Roofs, for example, there's a number that have been done without permits, and a couple other properties. And obviously, he's focused, met with SCC on their projects as well. We met this past week with Mike, Troy, Mark, and Klinger and Associates and Midwest Realty on their project to hopefully get them wrapped up and moving forward. They've got to do their water, sewer, and paving. They are also looking to take that last unit and make it a 12-plex rather than an 8-plex, and 1 bedrooms. And then they'd have 2 additional future buildings on that site as well. Same number of units overall. And of course, there will be follow-up inspections as well. Mark did a brief walkthrough, I believe, last week of the site and pointed out a few issues already. And we've had a conference call now and met a couple times regarding Casey's, moving that project forward as well. And he's been out at the hospital working to get that project wrapped up. The daycare, the additions to the daycare, and what is that called?
Kids Zone?
No, not
Kids
the
zone.
fountain, but
Splash pad?
Splash pad, and a few other things that they're doing out there. So, and take a look back there. It's pretty good order. And iWorks, the new system that the city purchased. Kelly's been doing training. Katie too
Yeah.
has been doing training. Angie's been doing training. Mark's been doing training, and we're also working on ensuring that we have proper letters and notices that will be incorporated into the software system. And everything will be able to be done electronically and sent out immediately to folks if they do a rental inspection or whatever it might be, straight from the iPad or from the computer. Everything will be tracked electronically in there as well. We want to make sure that we have the proper format for all of our various letters that go out, and we'll be incorporating those as well and getting that system up and running. Last piece of the puzzle there will be being able to take payments, and we have to have a meeting on exactly how we want to finish that up.
Did Midwest Realty have any idea when they'll be able to begin occupancy of the?
They were hoping October. They still have to connect to our water and sewer mains, and finish the infrastructure internally and pave, and then obviously finishing up a couple of the units. I believe they said they had 18 rented?
17 of them that
17?
are leased, or that people are ready to move into already.
Right.
That's about 47 or so units, right? Something like that.
52 or 48. I'm trying to think of the two projects. I think it was 48. Let's see, it was 4 4s, so that's,
Close
and
enough.
4 8, so 32 and 60, 48.
Gotcha. Good. And since you're talking about housing, you want to hit us on the 55+ community, anything update there? Any update there?
No, next piece will be property acquisition, and then TIF agreement, and moving forward there. But I'll check in with Chris.
Yeah. Thanks.
Angie's not here, so we'll go to other staff reports or council. Anybody?
I can do finance real quick. I mean,
Oh.
main thing, audit. We have the preliminary audit. Angie obviously is out sick, but we're going to meet, respond to a couple items, provided some additional information. Overall, very good. This is her first official audit where she was finance manager for the whole thing, and went well. I'd like to send a couple responses to the preliminary items that I've seen, but in general, very good. So, similar findings that you always find in smaller communities. So.
Kathy, you have anything?
Nothing tonight.
Andy?
I just wanted to thank Jesse real fast, but this is the least amount of speeders I've seen at the beginning of school, and I know we've had some issues here or there, and somebody on Melville, I think there's been a couple, but there's been less around my house than ever before, so thanks for cracking down.
We're trying to get them just different spots throughout working, so
Yeah, there's
Thank
a lot
you.
of kids that cross right there, and it's not extremely safe, so
I'll pass it on. Thank you.
appreciate it. That's all.
Well, if you give me one of those radar guns, I think I could work it for you.
You could do it from my porch.
Do you have lemonade?
I can make some lemonade for you.
John, do you have anything?
No. Oh, wait, yeah. Jesse, do you know how much has been raised for the dog yet?
I just had the numbers from last time. I don't have those numbers with me today.
It was in my update on Friday.
But is it,
Was it like 18, 16, 18?
Might be. Well, I don't know if. Yeah, I don't have. I don't.
It's in my Friday
and
update.
how much do we need?
For the.
Target was 50, I think, 40?
Yeah.
Yep. 40, 45.
I know this Saturday, Officer Menon just let me know today that the grand opening opening for Tractor Supply Company on Roosevelt is Saturday, and myself and him is going over there. They are giving us a 5 by 10 foot kennel. They're donating a 5 by 10 foot kennel. Ruth from Beckman's is donating the concrete for the kennel. So that's getting put in tomorrow. So there are a lot of things that are coming along that are getting donations. We're trying to, we're staying on top of the donations and getting a list and all that put down. So
And they were putting an event together?
that one is gonna not happen
Not having? Okay.
because it's the same day as YMCA's 5K run. So we're not going to compete against the
Find something
YMCA.
different? Okay.
So.
Thank you. I just thought maybe the public would like to know
Yep.
how much has been and how much we
So-
need.
Melody?
One comment, the mulch in the parks looks nice, thanks. Mike, it'd be nice, maybe next year we do it like at the beginning of the summer.
It wasn't available, or it would have been done. I just now, because Burlington's been doing a lot of tree work, is the only place I could get it. I have had no access to any mulch. Pat Klein's not quite done. Before I came here, I went to Burlington to check. There's 3 more loads that I'll get tomorrow. As they do theirs, I can get it. We'll get Pat Klein finished up too, but this is the first access I've had to the mulch from anywhere.
Thanks, okay, well, it's nice
Yeah,
what's
it's
there.
always planned to do it in the spring, but I have not had any opportunity to get the material until now.
Thanks for your explanation.
Can you get that from the county, from the dump?
The problem with the county is that that's not just trees. Those are pallets and lumber and nails and everything else that's ground
Okay.
in theirs. Yeah, they allow everybody to throw any kind of wood in there, so.
Okay.
Burlington just put new knives in there, as Patrick told me, and that's a lot finer than some of what we got it, and it's not a lot of trash in it, and they haul their trashier stuff south of the airport and put the other in the van, and he's been working with me and keeping me informed, and he's allowed us to, we run our loader over and we just haul it all out there in one day, and then when he fills them up again, we go get it again. But I'm hoping by the middle of next week, if they keep working, then we can keep working over here, and I'll finally get them all done.
And any update on the swimming pool? I know it's been closed for about, not quite, for 3 weeks now. How'd we come out, or do we have that
I
information?
don't
or-
think Angie's got that finished up yet.
We have a month-to-month comparison that we've started, and obviously we have a few months that are not part of that, are wrapped up for this year as well. Our revenue was at least double, I want to say, if not a little bit
I'm not
more.
willing to say anything.
I wanna say-
don't know enough about it.
That's okay, we'll
Last
get it
time I
next
looked at it,
next
but we've got a spreadsheet that we're working on, that'll have a comparison between, last year, this year. It'll be revenue and expenditures. We had, a couple higher years, a couple higher month in expenditures. I think it was July and August, or June and July. But that was basically due to usage. The hot weather and the pool was up, but our revenue, more than doubled, if I recall correctly, over last year, out of the pool. So, I'm expecting, things to come in much better. But I think we have 3 months that we need to throw into that comparison. I can give you what we have now, it just won't give you a complete picture.
Just for the next meeting, and
Yep.
then also an understanding of how our staffing, how it sets up for next year. Does it look like we're gonna be able to, we have to start from zero again with folks like we did 2 years ago, or if we're gonna be able to
Manager
retain
indicated
some of the staff?
that she's willing to come back, and I think several of the lifeguards as well, but we'll start early and often on that again. And umbrellas are being sold, new ones have been ordered. Facility's pretty much ready to go, Mike, right?
No,
No, not quite, okay.
I haven't brought that up yet, but I have Dyer's Painting that does our pool painting coming that 2024, 2025, the seams and the joints all have to be routed out and resealed, and the painting of the inside of the pool. So
That's right.
I will this fall have them down here yet to get numbers for next year's budget on that. I don't know if I can push it out till 25 or not, but those are, as of right now the only big expense I see for over there, but
Thank you. That's all I have.
We'll go to community reports, and we have our state representative, Matt Rinker, here to give us an update on the recent legislation. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Good evening. I have to admit, I've been in a lot of council meetings, but never one in this chambers. So it's a little unique to see how there's the differences and how the meetings flow and what comes in what order. So I appreciate letting me be a part of your meeting tonight. Again, as already mentioned, my name is Matt Rinker. I am the representative in the Iowa House of Representatives for District 99, which includes Burlington, West Burlington, Denmark, stretches down into Lee County a little bit, and includes Weaver out to Denmark, so in Danville, that area. I appreciate you letting me come tonight. What I wanted to do, and I reached out to Greg, and I feel like it's natural for me to be in council chambers and kind of give you an update, a little bit of some of the work that I did personally up at the Iowa House, and some of the things that your representative is working on. I know most of you are probably familiar with what the legislature has done as a whole. I think statewide we see a lot of that news, and you see a lot of those headlines, but I think it's always also good to know what are some of the things happening behind the scenes that you're not necessarily abreast of all the time. In front of me is a stack. So we call these the blue sheets. So as a caucus, every time we go in to discuss a bill, this is what's put together for us. And then these are the notes and questions that I ask or things that I challenge in a bill. Each one of these blue pieces of paper represents a bill that was discussed and passed in the Iowa House this last legislative session. There's a couple hundred pieces of paper here. And I think when we, again, hear about the headlines, we only hear about very few of those bills. There's lots of pieces of legislation in here. For example, the one on the top is suicide prevention information, where the legislature this year passed a bill that would require that all suicide hotline information and mental health resources are printed on school IDs at the high school level. That's just one example of one of the bills that was taken up that doesn't get a lot of press but can have a pretty big impact in a community, especially if you're a high school student who needs those services. Last year, the legislative session began in the first week of January and went sine and die on May 4th. That's the last day that we were in session. This was my first year in the Iowa House. So after winning my election last year, I approached the leadership in the Iowa House and made some committee requests. I was appointed to the local government committee, which was natural given my 5 years on city council in the city of Burlington. Public safety. I'm the vice chair of Veterans Affairs, and I was appointed to the Transportation, Infrastructure, and Capital Appropriations Subcommittee, also known as RIF. Projects that RIF contributes to locally. One of them is the new residential facility that's going to be built here in the city of Burlington over the next couple of years. City of Burlington had a playground project that we contributed to, Capitol Theater project, the Lake Geode Restoration project, the Southeast Iowa Regional Airport project, and we also have a project that is just beginning dollars that went through DNR out of RIF to support campground expansion out in Big Hollow. So those are just a few of the projects that we look at in RIF and support here locally. And then recently I was appointed to the statewide police and fire retirement board of trustees, also known as the 411 system. And what we do is we oversee and protect the retirement program for the state's law enforcement and firefighters. So Some of the bills that I worked on this year and bills that I filed. So last year when I ran for office at the statewide office, one of the things that was important to me, and this is an idea that came from a local police officer, was trying to increase the penalties for felons who are arrested in possession of a firearm. Constantly hearing stories about felons who are arrested, they're in a possession of a firearm, and they're back out on the street a year or 18 months later in possession of another firearm, and it's just a revolving door. So what I did is I filed House File 155, which increased the penalties for felons who are arrested in possession of a firearm. First offense is 2 years, second offense is 4 years, third offense is 7 years, and a fourth offense is 10 years, and those are all mandatory minimums. That bill made it out of House Committee, Subcommittee. House Committee actually was voted out of the House, and it made it out of Senate Subcommittee and the Senate Committee this past legislative session. It's currently sitting ready to be voted on in the Senate floor, and by all indications, it sounds like that's something that's probably going to move this upcoming legislative session and will hopefully be signed by the governor following that and then become law here in the state of Iowa. Just to show the impact that this area can have, that's something that statewide has been an initiative that law enforcement has been working on for quite some time. The idea came to me actually from a local law enforcement officer, and he helped me put the bill together. We got it filed, and now it's going to become law. So already this area is having an impact on some of the protections for law enforcement in the state. House File 173 was a bill that I filed that would regulate ATE, also known as traffic cameras, across the state. The goal there is to make sure that cities are, I don't want to take home rule away from cities. So the idea that I had and what I'm proposing here is where the state DOT would oversee traffic cameras on state highways, the county would oversee traffic cameras on county roads, and then the cities would oversee traffic cameras on city roads or municipal roads. So it would prevent the city of Burlington or West Burlington, for example, from putting a camera on Highway 34 because that would be a state highway, but you could easily put them on any municipal road that you're in charge of. House File 419 was an Endow Iowa tax credit rollover. So prior to this year, we had about a $6 million backlog of Endow Iowa tax credits that were sitting out there. People wanted to use them, but they weren't available. So my proposal would have taken the unused portion of Endow Iowa tax credits and would have rolled those over on an annual basis after they expired in the previous year. So for example, if a person is awarded a tax credit, they can hold those credits for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, they go away to that person. We would recapture that and roll it into the pot the next year. The idea was to try and alleviate some of that backlog. Instead, what we did in the legislature is we just, we capped that. And we went ahead and this year funded a one-time $6 million appropriation to take care of that entire backlog so that all the foundations in the state that needed those dollars and those credits could see those come through. House File 413 was something that I filed, and this idea actually came to me from a teacher here locally. The idea was to try and increase or improve the ratio of school psychologists and school counselors to student ratio. In Iowa, the average number of students in a district is 415 to one school psychologist. The Department of Education actually recommends that be about 200 to 1. So the program that I had would have put $2.5 million into a pot that school districts could have gone out to, applied for, and then they could have received up to $125,000. And they could have used that money over a 5-year period to help supplement the salaries of a school psychologist. It would also allow schools to cost share in that. So, for example, Burlington and West Burlington could both apply, both receive funding, and then go out and hire school psychologists to come in and work with their young people. Again, just to try and help with some of those mental health needs, especially at the elementary school and high school levels. Another bill that I filed would have created a mandatory COLA increase for Medicaid payments to hospitals and healthcare facilities in the state of Iowa. It would have put a 2.5% increase annually in mandatory minimum, or whatever the cost of living increase is. The idea there is we've got a lot of hospitals in the state that are struggling. They're struggling because we're starting to see a larger percentage of people who are on Medicaid that are receiving services, and it's no secret that when a person on Medicaid goes to, say, the hospital is typically losing money on that patient. So the idea is to try and see those increases in there so we can close that funding gap. Something else that I worked on, and I'm proud to say that this did get passed and signed by the governor. So Senate File 84 was a bill that came out of the Senate, and it strengthened the laws around the sexual exploitation of a minor. And one of the things that I had gotten from the Des Moines County Sheriff's Office this year was they had experienced problems where they would have people, adults, who would entice young people on social media, for example, and they would exchange content, they would exchange graphic photos, but unfortunately, there's very little that they can do to that person until that person arranges a meeting and physically goes to meet with who they believe to be a minor. When, in a matter of fact, the person they're communicating with is a sheriff's deputy or a law enforcement officer of some sort. So what we did is we passed a bill, or I filed an amendment, was able to get the amendment attached, and through the process, and again, it became law that would allow for a person to be charged for enticing a minor if, in fact, the person on the other end of that Facebook page, who they believe to be a 13-year-old little girl, is in fact a law enforcement officer. So we can actually get those people off the street and protect our youth. So I'm proud that we were able to get that done. One thing I'd like to just mention, and a lot of these bills that I already mentioned, some of them are dead. They didn't make it out of committee, weren't able to garner enough support. They were too costly. Some of them are ideas that I have and things that I will continue to work on and file for the future. But the idea here is if we file the bill today and we can get the conversation started today, that eventually as we continue to lobby for those new ideas that we file, that ultimately we'll see them become priorities within the state and hopefully become law. Some of these things will take a couple of years to happen, but when you see us file a bill and it doesn't move anywhere, it's never not for naught, right? So in 2024, there's a few bills that about 15 things that I've been working on throughout the year. Some of them pertain to West Burlington. For example, Senate File 9 was one last year that would have opened up a new pot of money for schools or school districts that have a large percentage of open enrolled kids in where they're experiencing financial hardship. This was actually something that was brought to me by the West Burlington superintendent, and her and I communicated a lot on this issue, and I learned as much about it as I could. That bill ultimately made it out of committee in the Senate, but did not make it out of the Senate. So my goal this year is to try and pick that up where it left off, and see if we can't get that double barrel both in the House and in the Senate, so we can try to work to get that legislation passed and support West Burlington schools, for example, in the way that we can. Another bill that I'm looking at, so I mentioned the state's 411 system. So as most of you are familiar with, sometimes, unfortunately, our firefighters or our law enforcement officers develop chronic illnesses. And the way the law currently works, if that happens, then the city is responsible for assuming a lot of the medical costs associated with that. And currently under the code, the city is not allowed to go out and purchase insurance to help hedge those costs. So one of the bills that I'm looking at would allow a city, if they so choose, to go out and purchase insurance to be able to cover the expenses so that they can meet those obligations to protect our law enforcement and our firefighters. Another bill that I'm working on is around the name, image, and likeness in college sports. I know that that's something for some people probably isn't super important, but we'd be looking at trying to make Iowa more competitive. Believe it or not, college sports in this state is incredibly important, and it drives a ton of economic revenue. Iowa football, for example, last year had economic revenue of over $88 million just in the program. Economic impact in the state was over $200 million. And that's just one region school. Another bill that I'm looking at would would help with some of what I consider to be some of our recycling needs. So currently, if you sell plastic bottles, you're not required to have a recycling receptacle on site. So I would be looking at passing a law that would say if you're a business owner and you sell plastic bottles, you just need to have a separate plastic container that person can choose to put that bottle into, so we can try and keep as much of that plastic out of our landfills as possible. And then another bill that was discussed last year and will pick up this year again is one that would, when some of the COVID dollars go away, make sure that we have school lunches made available to some of the people who can't afford it, and possibly even look at making it available to the entire state free of charge if they would qualify. 2023 major legislative policy issues that we did see happen just in the legislature that weren't necessarily bills that I ran, but they were bills that made it through the Iowa House. One is the education savings account, which created education savings accounts for all Iowa students. Another one was the school supplemental aid. So one of the things that the House argued for was a higher SSA increase. And we negotiate that with the Senate, and this year we did a 3% SSA increase, which is the highest that we've seen over the last 5 years. The government reorg bill, so basically it took state departments from 36 to 16 different departments. We saw some consolidation. Ultimately, that bill is going to save the state around $250 million over the next 5 years. And then the property tax bill, which I'm sure is one that you are all very familiar with. So it created a new single levy. It created a new 65 and over property tax exemption of $3,250. It increased the disabled veterans property tax exemption from $1,852 to $4,000. Just a quick tidbit about that. So I did some research on that because I was managing another bill that relates to disabled veterans. That 1,852 is not just a magic number that was come up with arbitrarily. 1,852 is the average cost of a home in the state of Iowa after World War I, which was the last time that number was adjusted. So that's where that number came from, and this year we increased it to 4,000. And then we saw limits on assessments and limits on assessment growth for cities that see significant assessment increases. And then it also created bond elections, or the timing of those bond elections, shifted it to a general election. The legislature's goal there was to try and see as much voter turnout for some of these bonding decisions that we see in different cities. So outside of that, that's a real quick high-level overview of some of the things that I worked on personally and then we did in the legislature. I'd be more than happy to open it up for questions. I would say that if you ask me something specific, I don't know all of these bills by heart. So if you have a specific question, I may have to do a little research and get back to you with the answer. But outside of that, I'd open it up to the council and happy to answer your questions if I can.
I've got two quick things. Number one, just thank you very much for being here. This is the first time we've had a state rep in these chambers since I've been here, and that was a annual thing, like I mentioned when I was on the school board. So thank you.
Sure,
thank
absolutely.
you for being here. On the last bill you just talked about, of course, the limits on the valuations and growth. How does that play out in your mind for a small town like us that we may see, under no fault of our own, the cost of everything we do go up by 8-10% due to inflation on a national level. Obviously, wages going up, so all our wages are increasing, and cost of every material is increasing, and yet we're also not growing in terms of new facilities and new growth, so that we don't have a lot of that income coming in. So we're really just making the majority of our tax dollars off of current homes, which are of course rising in value as well with that inflation, but then you've put a cap. So how are we supposed to long term, if that continues, we can probably eat a year of it, but long term, if that math continues, we run out of money. So what is the reasoning there? How are we supposed to get around that?
So let me tell you that the property tax bill was one that I had a lot of problems with and argued a lot of points within my caucus. There are a lot of things in the bill I liked, and there are a lot of things in the bill that I didn't like. Some of the things that you're mentioning are some of the things that I had significant issues with. And my answer to your question, first off, excuse me, is it's going to be a moving target for a couple of years. I do expect property tax conversations to continue to develop at the state level. And one of the triggers for that is the fact that this bill sunsets in 2029. So in 2029, if the legislature hasn't come up with a more permanent solution to the property tax conversation, then this bill is going to go away and things are going to go back to where they were before. There is some question on the levy side of that, how those levies will be restructured, what will come back inside those levies. And I'm working on getting some clarity to that. So I will get you an answer once I do get that. The real answer to your question is, I don't think that you're going to see a significant impact on the property tax cap or recalculation side of this bill. And when I say that, so I talked and sat down with city administrators from this area when we had these conversations, just to try and get a good picture or snapshot of what kind of growth you have had and what kind of growth to expect. But ultimately, if you have a growth of 3% or less annually, you'll see no impact. And for the city of Burlington, for example, when I was on the council, we hadn't seen growth in the last 2 years. We don't expect to see 3% growth in the next year. If you do experience growth, and this is net growth, if you do experience that growth between 3 and 6%, you would be able to capture that, but you would see 2% of that go back into buying down your levy rates. And the goal is to try and get property tax relief to property taxpayers. The cities, in my opinion, that are going to be most impacted by this are the ones in the metro areas that are seeing significant growth. In some cases, growth as much as 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 14%, where they're going to see more of their general levy bought back down. I can't tell you with a crystal ball what this is going to look like when the conversation and all the dust settles. We are already seeing or experiencing issues with some of the things in this bill, and I do believe that we're going to have to go back as a legislature and have those conversations and make sure that we do our best to correct some of the things that maybe aren't going to work out the way that we had intended. But to answer your question, I would say that in the short term, I don't expect, based on what I've reviewed, for the city of West Burlington to see a significant impact on that recalculation cap.
Well, also with the other points of that bill, I agree with you. The tax deductions for seniors and for veterans, I think those are great things to do. Obviously deal with that every day in real estate, so yep. It's a nice point. But that point specifically, as you said, I do hope you'll go back, and I would have been with you on a large city seeing 10% growth, 12% growth, those kind of things. That I can kind of see that, but a city like ours, just know our tax rate's not going up. We've been the same for 20 years. So really we just see as the cost of goods goes up and our cost of homes go up, we stay about even and we leave it right there.
Yep.
So when you start to cap that at the same time where it's external thing, we didn't do anything to make all the costs go up, but now if we can't realize that gain, we're going to be in the hole eventually. Again, not right now, but eventually.
Yeah, I wouldn't, unless the city of West Burlington experiences property tax valuation growth of that 6% or more, I wouldn't expect for you to see significant turbulence in your revenues. I think what we have to do as a state, and this is just me speaking, is we need to focus on how we can support communities to get them to a point where they are seeing 6 and 8% growth, because that's great, right?
Nice.
So I'd love to see every rural community in the state experiencing what some of the more urban areas are, which is significant growth, because in my opinion, that's the best way for communities to support and help their property taxpayers, is to see the growth so they can see additional revenues, so they can have more people paying into the pot. That reduces the stress on individual property taxpayers, in my opinion, the best.
Last comment, when you go back to have that conversation, understand there's small towns like us, completely landlocked. I can only grow so much.
Yep.
So eventually that runs out for me. You run that math equation long enough, I run out of space. And it's going to happen pretty quick.
We'll just have to build up.
Yeah. Thank you again for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt, on the school bill, Which one?
The one where open enrollment.
Yeah.
Can you give us any detail on that? Was the money going to follow the students? What are you proposing?
No. So currently there is a pot of money out there to support other programs or so currently there's a pot of money out there that supports another area of students who transition within districts. Okay. That open enrolled districts or districts that have large amounts of open enrollment aren't eligible to tap into. Okay. What this bill did is it just opened up their pathway to be able to tap into those funds as well. It doesn't take revenues from, say, for example, if a student moves from the city of Burlington to the city of West Burlington, the only thing that would follow that student as it currently does today is that SSA. The rest of those revenues or the rest of those dollars are going to stay with the city of Burlington. But the city of West Burlington then could go into the pot of funds that's out there supporting these other programs to get assistance if they have, excuse me, my kids gave me a cold, so I'm
That's
battling
okay. That's okay.
So it would give the city of West Burlington an opportunity to go out and get financial support because they have a larger percentage of open enroll kids. And I can get you more details, but the bill that did get filed last year by Brad Zahn out of the Des Moines area was Senate File 9. So if you want to read the specific language of that bill, I would just say go out and look at last year's Senate File 9 reading. Again, it got out of committee. It did not get off the Senate floor, but I think, as Brad told me last year, that was the first year that he had filed it. And as I already mentioned, it's one of those things where we file it last year, we get some momentum behind it, we have some conversations behind it, and then hopefully we get it filed again this year and continue to drive momentum so we can get those funds made available to those districts that need it. And there's very few districts in the state that fall into the category of having a very large percentage of open enrolled in kids.
So the bill that Reynolds passed for like private schools, money from
The ESA bill?
I don't know.
Yes.
I'm not sure. How does that work exactly? Do you know anything about
So,
that bill that
yep.
would follow up with this bill? Do they interact at all?
No, these two bills wouldn't do the same thing. So the education savings account bill, what that did, well, it did a lot of things, but the primary thing that it did is it made kids who are attending a private school eligible to receive the SSA amount, the per pupil amount that the public school receives from the state to go towards their private school tuition or expenses, right? What it also did was it then credited all of the public schools for any kids that go to private schools. Now, I evaluated this area extensively when we had these conversations. I talked to the private schools. I talked to them about what their capacity looked like. I talked to the public schools and tried to determine how many kids do they currently have that go to private schools. And the reason is, prior to this bill, both the city or the Burlington Community School District and the West Burlington Community School District had a reasonably large population of kids that attended Burlington Notre Dame, for example, or Holy Trinity or Burlington Christian School. Now, Burlington Christian isn't currently a part of the program because they're not accredited, but these dollars can only go to accredited programs. But if they were to become accredited, they would be eligible. So for all the kids that live in West Burlington that last year attended Notre Dame and this year attend Notre Dame that qualify for that, the city of West Burlington is going to get $1,200 for that student that they've never gotten before. And they've never gotten anything for that student previously. But now, the school, I'm sorry. This West Burlington School District would get $1,200 for that child.
But didn't the school continue to get the money from that student when he went to Notre Dame?
No.
I never knew
So
about the kid.
when the student goes to Notre Dame, the West Burlington Community School District would have never have had that student in their account. So they would have never have received any dollars for those students. So when I talked with the districts and based on the evaluation, because of the capacity limitations, there's not enough capacity to see a major shift from public schools in this area to private schools, because Notre Dame and Holy Trinity, they just don't have the capacity to take in a lot of students. Based on the conversations and the calculations that I did for these districts, they're probably going to be better off financially overall, because they're going to now get that $1,200. Now, when the dust settles, I'll reevaluate that and continue to reevaluate that on an annual basis. But my thoughts are that that bill ultimately will be a good bill for this area.
So just so I'm clear, so let's say a kid lived in Denmark and he was going to a school in Notre Dame.
Yep.
The Denmark school would get
$1,200 under with the new bill.
And then they would pay the tuition for Notre Dame?
Correct. Through the education savings account. Now, it's also worth mentioning, we didn't move public education dollars from public education into this program. These were yeah, correct. So these were new dollars put into education. This was nothing was taken away from the public schools. And to note, so over the next 5 years, we'll spend $1 billion on the ESA program, but we're going to spend $15 billion on public education. So that is still a priority to the legislature, and we'll continue to support public education. At least I will, as best as I can.
Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah.
So since you mentioned those are new dollars, where did they come from to fund the ESA?
So the state, prior to my getting there in this last year, very cost conscious. We've got about a $5 billion surplus currently. So those new dollars came out of that surplus.
Came from taxes?
Correct. Yeah. And so the state of Iowa, we've continued to see great growth economically across the state. As long as we continue to see that growth, we'll continue to see revenues. Now, the year before my getting there last year, the state passed income tax legislation that changed some of that. So we will see the amount of I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart. We will continue to see the amount of that surplus.
Go down.
Well, the expectation is to still see it grow, but we will not be seeing it grow by the amount or the percent that we continue to see it grow by. So, and as we continue to get into income tax conversations over the next session or sessions beyond that, we'll be able to have those conversations. And there is a desire within the legislature to make sure that we evaluate how much of a surplus we truly have on hand. We recognize the fact that there are needs across the state, and we'll continue to have those conversations. And education will be a part of that, as will healthcare and infrastructure, things like that.
3 quick items. We've already discussed them, but just for council benefit, public benefit. Obviously, you know, I have a number of issues with property tax legislation.
You and me both.
And we've discussed that. One, there's no catch-up provisions. You mentioned it already. Des Moines County and every city within it had 2 years of negative growth the past 2 years, and there's no catch-up provisions. Every year, to my recollection, that there's been property tax changes, the legislature has worked with both the Legislative Services Bureau and the Iowa League of Cities to calculate the impact on cities and counties for that property tax legislation. That did not happen this year and hasn't happened yet. And third, communication. I would like to commend you for communicating with myself, with Chad, and with others, but generally across the board, there was zero communication on the topic of property taxes, which has not been the case historically. People were pretty tight-lipped about it, but I do appreciate the communication very much. And I guess I'll leave it at that. But so thank you for the communication. And obviously, I think there's some work to do, but I'd encourage you to look at those couple items.
Yeah, and I just coming in, that's a lot of the concerns that you have, I also had.
Right.
And anytime I talk to you or any other person in the district that I represent, those comments don't just stay with me. They're absolutely heard by every single person, every single Republican and Democrat legislator in the House, and even the governor's office in a lot of circumstances. So that information is pushed on, and it is something that people are aware of. in a lot of these cases. I had a lot of conversations around this bill. I had a lot of things that I didn't like that I tried to perfect and I was unsuccessful in. Doesn't mean that I'm just going to say, okay, well, that's water under the bridge and we're not going to worry about it anymore. It'll be something that I'll continue to work on as long as I'm a legislator.
Appreciate that.
Anybody have anything else for Matt?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you
Well,
very
again,
much.
I appreciate you giving me the time, and if you ever do want to discuss something, either one-on-one, ask Greg for my cell. I have no problem having a conversation. If you see something get filed, if you're unhappy about something, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to take whatever input I can. And I had a conversation with somebody earlier today. I had a great idea, something where I jotted down some notes and I'm going to start working on. So if you've got an idea of something out there, I'm more than happy to take that and try and run with it if we can make it work, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
That's okay, I appreciate it.
Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you. We'll move on to citizens' inquiries. If you have anything you would wish to talk about, if you'll come up to the microphone and state your name and address and what your concerns are.
Yes, I have some concerns. I have to give my name
Sorry,
where I live?
can you name that microphone? It's not even-
No,
Oh, sorry.
that's my only thing. I've come to other meetings before, and I could hardly hear any of you guys.
Could you
Oh, that's
tell me
right.
your name?
The only one I heard was him because he has a louder voice and you were right in front of it.
Could you tell me your name and address, please?
Kathy Vanover,
You.
413 West Burlington Avenue.
Thank you.
Is that on? Or do I need it on?
I can hear you fine. I can hear you fine.
Okay. My big concern is the speeding on West Burlington Avenue is horrible. I don't know if I should only talk to Jesse but I was sitting out there last night at 10:45. They had to have been going 40. It looked like they were driving down Roosevelt. It was horrible. I live right across from the old Roses. Do you remember where that is?
Mm-hmm.
There can be somebody down at the pool, and I'll go out to go toward Mount Pleasant Street, and I can tell if they're going too fast. And I get out there, and I'm like, heck with it, I'm going. And by the time I get to Houston, they are right on my bumper. And it happens the other way, too. It's terrible. It's terrible. And the amount of people on their phones is ridiculous, especially at night. I think they're dumb because your phone illuminates and they're like, it's right there in front of them. So, but the speeding's the worst. Sometimes I can sit there 4 or 5 minutes to get out because I can just, like I said, I can tell if they're going too fast or either way, and I hate it. I hate it. The kids ride their bikes and, we like stand out there and wait and watch, and people don't watch them when they're going, they just cross the street, and it's like, it's ridiculous. It really is. I don't know what
What times? I mean, I know you're saying all times, but what are the hot time frames?
usually it's like 6:30, people go to school or work.
6:30 a.m. or
Yeah,
okay.
Anytime after 8 o'clock at night, and I love it. I've seen them sit down in the pool parking lot. I like that, but they see them. So they're going to stop. I'm not saying don't stop doing it, but I was coming down, headed north, just getting ready to go, and there was a car coming from Van Wees, didn't even stop. And the car over here was going straight too. And they had to slam on their brakes. I mean, I'm just like, I've never seen one do that. He didn't even slow down at all. Late evening is good time.
What, excuse me?
Late evening?
Oh, late evening, okay.
Yeah, late evening. Honestly, anytime, you know. But those are the worst times. The weekend, all day. You know, they don't care. You know, it's sad, but
So do you have any idea how to fix that? Do you think?
fix it?
Well,
Speed
no,
bumps.
well,
No.
do you think maybe
I think,
Um,
honestly, and I hate the thought of it, but a stop sign at Houston and at Pennington. I complained before, and they put up one of those flashers, you know, that have the speed limit.
yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you.
It was off. And it was all the way down by Glasgow. So you're coming from Van Wees, and it was off. I think it was out there 3 days. Because I would drive to Aldo every day.
What do you mean when you say it was off?
It was off.
Oh,
It
it
wasn't
wasn't
on.
working?
'Cause
Oh.
when I'm approaching it, you know, usually it'll start flashing
Oh,
with your speed.
Well, I think it only flashes if you're over, right?
No.
No?
There's two modes to that. There's one, if we can shut the display off so nobody can see the display, but we're still getting the numbers.
Yeah.
And we actually it's more accurate that way than having the speed up there, because people mess with it and they want to try to beat the high speed score for the day. So we tend to shut those off sometimes if we want to get accurate numbers of what's going on in that particular area. We'll shut the display off.
But it was only out for 3 days too, though. I don't know. Do you say, okay, you got enough data for 3 days?
It just depends what's going on and who else requested it, because we get those from Southeast Iowa Regional Planning. They're the ones that provide those for me, and then just last week they asked if I wanted it, so there's an option that I can sign up for it to get it back again for some data.
I don't know if they have the police officers in their car. Do they have the radar on all the time?
Not all the time, but we do have the option of both moving and stationary modes in our squad cars, with antennas going through the front windshield and the rear windshield.
Do you have some just like handheld ones that?
We do have a LiDAR also.
Can I borrow it? I'm serious. I will sit out, my grandson, I even said something to him, and he's like, okay, Nanny, he said, you sit here and we'll hold it, and I'll write it down. They even say,
Yeah.
they do. And then those stupid, loud motorcycles, not Harleys, the others that are, same guy.
I've got all the information down. I'll send out a memo.
Thank you.
There are options where we can do some different things that I'm not going to discuss in open, but we'll work on it.
Okay. You can
Oh, yeah.
always stop and,
I got you.
okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
thank you. I don't see any other citizens in here to make inquiries, so we'll move on. There's nothing with old business, so we'll move on to new business. Item number 1 is to consider resolution approving the acquisition of real estate from Westland Mall Realty Holdings LLC for the Gear Avenue Trail Extension Project.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Have a motion with support. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns?
Nope.
I would ask Greg, just give a 30-second to the community of what's going on.
Sure. Council had, we'd put together a dedication agreement, once we learned that the property acquisition hadn't been done a while back. This will transfer the 30-foot of right-of-way for the trail that's over here on the map, and as well as providing a construction easement for the project. December letting for the project. Going forward, wrapping up just the final details with DOT and the engineers. They're doing their final reviews, get that ready for bid letting. Still working with the coffee shop owner to figure out exactly how best to relocate them back to the east. And so hopefully that'll go out to bid in December. We'll get the final numbers, come back to council. We have about 80% of that funding from outside grants, four different grants, I believe. Public on the bid letting process. Yeah. The DOT will be doing the letting, but of course we'll have the same. We'll have the public hearing, et cetera, on the project, but. Lost my train of thought.
Is this Greg's long-winded answer to, we're going to have a nice trail down through the mall area that connects up over the highway to SEC and the hospital?
Which is why I asked Austin for the map, so that we could hang that up here at City Hall and have it at the community visioning session. So yes,
Plan is to break ground
but
next spring?
it will be a 10-foot trail. Yes, from where it ends across from SEC all the way to Houston Street. And it'd be a wonderful addition to the area and connectivity for the residents, the mall, SEC, the hospital, and over to Division Street. So yes.
Greg, are we talking about filling in the ditch or anything there in that corner?
Where it comes down, that section will be filled in. We've got a couple different options. We could fill that in and pipe it. We could let the water go overground into the inlet. We've also talked about planting some vegetation in there as well. So we got a couple different options that we can pursue, but it will obviously be built up there and piped underneath the trail itself. But on the north side, I don't think we've come to a conclusion exactly what we'd like to see there. I'm personally, I think I'm leaning towards leaving it as it is, but adding some proper vegetation in there to treat it as more of a barrier to the street. Because if we do end up putting a trailhead and some other amenities in there, I think I'd rather see the barrier at this point in time with some nice vegetation, make it look nice, et cetera, in there.
I kind of like to have a work session on that because I got different views for that or different ideas. I kind of like to see that filled in.
Very costly, yeah.
Yeah,
I understand.
You know, the whole trail's costly.
But we'll be talking about that, bringing those community visioning ideas ahead of time, and I think that'd be a good time to talk about it when we talk about that trail and what we'd like to do in that area. It won't be done as part of the trail project. That'll be done separately. But we can.
You can't do that with the trail money?
No, it would be a separate project.
But could we? And that way it wouldn't be so costly and it might get done then.
What's that?
The trail project's already been approved.
Yeah, I mean, the DOT has reviewed that project. The engineer, Mike, do you remember how much he indicated that would cost to include it in there? And I think we could probably do it cheaper ourselves. With the clay that.
The number in my head was $80,000 or $90,000 by the time we filled that in.
Yeah, and we could probably do it.
By hauling in all the
We could probably do it.
dirt and clay.
If we piped it and filled it, we could probably do it ourselves. It would be one option. I say ourselves, I say Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
But there's certainly some options that we could look at if you wanted to flatten that area out. I mean, fencing would be an alternative to keeping that barrier in place, but we'll certainly bring it back for discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to have a discussion on that.
Any other comments? Roll call?
Crowner,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Newberry.
Aye. Motion passed. Item number 2 is to consider a contribution towards the Greater Burlington Partnership Partnering for the Future campaign. You were at our council meeting last time we met.
I'll make a motion to fully fund the partnership, but I would like to also with that motion mention on the funding side what I would like to see happen. Continue the $5,000 a year that we're currently paying, which I believe comes out of lost. Is that correct, Greg? And then I would fund the other half, the other $5,000 a year out of our hotel motel tax. We've got about 145,000 just sitting in that fund with no current use. I would put that money towards that, which will help kick off the courts on that partnership. So stay where we are with the 5K and use the other 5K a year out of hotel motel.
The current 25 is TIF, not local option.
Okay. TIF
So you're
instead.
saying 10 total?
10 total, but use the other 5 out of hotel motel.
Support.
Motion with support.
Do you need me to amend that to
Oh, I will.
TIF?
I will say TIF.
So you're going to do 5 from TIF and 5 from
Hotel motel.
Hotel Motel?
Hotel motel, sorry, local option.
Well,
There was a second, correct?
Yeah, I second that.
what?
I'm in support.
I got to repeat myself. I still think, I think it's a mistake not to include the mall specifically in that, or that area, because it's, to me, it's an opportunity to be a transformative project for our community, just like the downtown is, which is specifically spelled out in their program of work for the next 5 years. From an economic development perspective, that, other than the potential business park at the old Raider site, I mean, that has the biggest opportunity to be transformative. I do appreciate them working with us on housing and continuing to do so. And yes, the plan is to continue to work, as we discussed earlier, with Councilman Crowner and I, continuing, the committee had intended to continue the housing committee, probably a new group, but to continue that going forward to push for housing in and around the county. But Della did reach out to talk about the survey and setting up a meeting on that as well. But I'm still a bit stuck on from an economic development perspective. I think that area is just as important as the downtown. It needs to be included in their specific written work plan. But my 2 cents.
And with that said, I have to say I read through the stuff again tonight, and most of the funding seems to be going downtown, and downtown is a priority for them too. But so is the mall, and so is us out here. And at our meeting with them the last time, I told them what I would like to see. And until that happens, I'm not going to vote for $10,000. I will vote for the $5,000 like we have been, and I appreciate the things that they're doing, but they want the other 10 or the other 5. It has to be an equal name. So that's where I'm at with it.
I do think it's important that we continue to work with the Chamber from an economic development perspective overall. I mean, Phoenix investors, hopefully that ends up being a good project for us as well. But difficult choice. We have a lot of planning efforts coming forward as well.
Well, when I've thought about it and looked at what the focus of the organization is, they stated for the next 5 years, is to grow the workforce, grow business, and grow population. And it's not specific, geographically specific to anywhere other than the focus area of Greater Burlington. In other words, it's hard to draw a line between where it's Burlington, where it's West Burlington, where it's any one of the other businesses and organizations that support it. In other words, when the banks put their money towards the support of the hospital, you don't get to pick, well, I only want to focus on things that bring more business to my bank, or things that make it more enjoyable for my hospital employees. You can't segregate the focus of the money that way. That doesn't work that way. That's not what marketing is. And what they do is they're marketing. They're, in my book, a public marketing firm for us, for this region. And I think about if we had to hire an organization to promote West Burlington for $10,000 a year, what would we get? And I don't think we get much, bottom line. But for $5,000, I think we'd get a nice idea, a plan, but we get nothing physically done. And this is so how I think about it. For $10,000 a year to help promote our workforce and to help promote the businesses we have, and to grow the population, to encourage people to stay here, to encourage people to come to our area. I think it's a good value for our money.
So I agree with you on the value.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a good value at $5,000. It could be a good value at $10,000. It could be a good value at $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
But it's what is promoting it. There seems to be a lot more promoting an area, and particularly downtown Burlington, than anything out here in West Burlington. For instance, the mall. And until that happens, I say it's a $5,000 donation.
I think one thing to understand about how the chamber is funded is there is a downtown partnership that is separate, and it's funded through separate state dollars. And so when they create a document that says, here's things we're going to do, they've got to tell that area of their organization what they're going to do. So downtown has to be included, otherwise they have employees that are not involved in their plan, where there's not special state mall funding to go to our mall. But my experience with them has been, if I get somebody that's interested in a property or coming to town and bringing a business here, they will jump into a room with me immediately. And if we have somebody that's interested in coming to the mall, which right now is for sale, if there's somebody that's interested and wants to come in, they will be in the room in the conversation, just like they've been with ABB. But right now, we don't own that property. They don't own that property.
I understand.
It's kind of hard to put, one of our big goals is to have you sell your property and redo it, right? I mean, that's a pretty tough goal to put down on a list. So I have no doubt that if something starts happening there, they will be involved. But I too would not put that on my goal list to sell a third party. I want to sell a third party property and redo it. That's kind of an odd goal for their organization.
I guess maybe I'm meaning more of, well, hey, we have 10 people in a meeting room and you know, maybe the mall would work for something like this or something like that, you know, versus maybe it just doesn't even get brought up because there's something downtown that has a priority, because that's where the priority seems to be at making. So then we get put out. Until it gets put out there as a project with them, it's not going to get the attention.
So if we put on there, our project this year is we're going to sell Johnny's house. You'd be like, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. I don't want, it's not theirs.
I understand that. But it is for sale, and it is for economic development, and it would be a plus here. And they know that. And
Yep.
And I just don't think we get a shake like we should.
Well, we definitely don't. I mean, because there's not the state dollars to fund us. where downtown has specific state dollars to fund it. That's a state program.
Okay.
So no, we wouldn't be, they have employees that full-time work on downtown. That's it. And it's funded by the state.
I rest my case.
So the issue here is we're not trying to sell Johnny's house. We're trying to improve the area around Johnny's house and bring more to our area. So if the conversation is not, we don't have the right people, how do we change that narrative so we do have the right funding and we do have the backing? What do we do to bring that to our community?
Very good.
You would need to talk to the state about their funding dollars. That's not the
I feel
chamber.
like-
They've got to work with what they've got.
I feel like the chamber can come alongside us to fight for those funding dollars for us. And that's what I would be requesting with that. Not necessarily that we're going to sell them all, that we're going to do this, but we're going to improve our neighborhood. And I want them to come alongside us and say, this is what I want to do for that.
Okay. I mean, I see it every day working with them. but-
I'm
but to
not
sit there-
doubting what they're
To
doing
sit there
for
and put
us.
that on a goal list,
So I'm not saying that that has to be on our goal list, but how are we going to narrate this story to include that as one of our objectives? I feel like we're doing a great part of it with the trail, but we're not done there. So
Why wouldn't it be on the list? Andy?
I don't know how you would put that on a list to change that development. As a major goal of this initiative, why that would be one of the very top things. And if you look at most of those goals, they are improve housing, raise, not a specific property. Outside of Raiders, which is in West Burlington, I'm not sure there is any other specific properties on that list.
I'll just look it up here. Yeah.
Well, there's two of us that are members with the chamber. I'm on the Economic Development Committee. You're on the
Tourism.
Tourism.
Yep, and Melanie was involved on, which
goal
one was it?
setting
Goal Setting
For
Committee.
this.
Yeah.
I mean, and those are certainly forums to bring it forward, as well as the greater, the larger board, you know, and setting up conversations to see how we can't move that issue forward with the chamber, with city staff. I mean, those are certainly things that we can request, like meeting on the survey that
Right.
we discussed at the last meeting. But as an example, $50,000 to $75,000 to hire a firm to come in and tell you what commercial businesses, restaurants, for example, would be a good fit for your community. Not to bring them in, just to hire them to come in and tell you what it would cost. Dubuque, $250,000, 2 employees, plus all of their other employees. Their 2 top employees, about 7, 8 years ago, were making $250,000 a year, working on economic development.
And that was,
that's
that's
just-
an annual
That's
cost.
just 2 employee wages. So it's certainly not cheap to bring in an outside third party to work or to hire economic development staff to come in and work for you. So, just as 2 examples.
Well, the other thing I would mention is the courts is opening. And my intention had been, and that's why I mentioned using the hotel motel fund, was to come back and ask council for a special one-time thing to the courts to get that up and running. It's like the Recplex, except for basketball, volleyball, and pickleball, to be able to get tournaments in and start that. Having discussions with them, they said, no, let's just fund it through this and not do a separate buy-in. So that's why I think using the hotel motel to help get that started through this program makes a ton of sense for us. I mean, that fills up all our hotels every weekend out at the Recplex, and to then do that more in the off-season, like the bubble has started, but to fill up the rest of the off-season, I think that's a great buy for us.
What do you mean the courts?
Courts is a huge facility being added onto the back of Fun City,
Yeah.
which a bunch of basketball courts and stuff should open here in a month and a half, something like that. They've got some tournaments scheduled already. But a lot of that's funded through these same marketing dollars that go through the tourism board.
And Andy, the courts is that a private, public funded type situation? Or-
There's been a lot of public funding, or sorry, private funding that have went into it, but then it's all run through the dollars through the tourism board. So like when so the Sports Authority is another committee I sit on, and when somebody in Cedar Rapids wants to bring a tournament here, they have grant dollars that they go out and find those tournaments and help bring them in and bring in teams, which then fill up the hotel rooms. So it's not necessarily that they own the facility, but they're bringing the tournaments in and funding them.
So while, I mean, a lot of the economic development activities that we do don't happen in public until they come forward for funding opportunities, or they involve public participation, council participation, city participation. I mean, I'm willing and happy to, and would be doing it anyways, is sitting down with the chamber and trying to come up with a plan of action and how to approach not only that topic, but others as well. I mean, we need to be doing that anyways. But if it can live outside of the document, and this is an annual commitment. I mean, you don't see progress, you can revisit the topic, I guess theoretically.
So maybe
you are. They were seeking up to 5 years. I think
5
Burlington was
years,
doing
10
3 years. They said we could do up to 5 years.
Yeah.
Commitment. But I'm certainly happy to sit down with them, try to come up with a plan of action and bring that forward, and on how we can deal with some of these topics
if we could see
outside of
it,
the specific plan they've put forward.
I think we should go with the 5,000. And if we see a change, I would be more than happy to go up to 10 next year. But if I don't see any foreseeable change, and if I don't, then I don't think we should be paying them anymore. Yeah, that's so. If we're wanting,
And what's your definition
we're
of change?
if we're wanting to do the 10, we could do this for 4 or 5 for the first year, and then bring it back to us next year.
Well, so what's your definition of change? What in
Well-
your mind is change?
Promotion.
Promote, go shop at the mall?
No, it's in the flyer. It's promote Burlington, Greater Burlington, downtown partners. Very little is said about us. Very. I can bring it up right here, and there's 3 pages, and we're mentioned one time. Maybe they brought up that they are having some changes in the process in a year or within the year.
Breaking apart
Of bringing, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were bringing like a different name, or they were combining things to make it more Burlington, West Burlington, instead of just Burlington Greater. Maybe I read that wrong, but that's what I thought they said.
You asked about Grow Greater Burlington. We did that 20
Yep.
years ago.
And it has,
That's when that effort was done. I mean, that was a community.
so maybe it's time for a change.
Maybe.
Maybe this is the time for it,
Right.
and I would like that.
That's just when the last effort was done.
I think what you're thinking of is the publication they were putting out.
Yeah.
That they're gonna make some changes with that.
Break it into
that's-
2 instead of
So
1.
if I see that, then I'm more for
I
this.
feel like in some of that, there would be ways to include
In us.
a little better than
Yeah.
has been.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
So I think this is the 5th year of the 25,000, and we have done that a time before. So we have paid them $50,000 over the last 10 years. And I've been on council all that time, and I've not seen anything that really was of great benefit for us. I was hoping we could do a little bit more. I agree with John. I would rather stay with the 5 to show that, we're willing to work with them. But I think until they can prove to me that we might be the center of attention for a while, I'm not willing to spend the citizens' money here to be funneled to there. That's just my thought. We have we have housing we need to work with. We have a lot of projects on our plate. And we have the Raider property, and they brought in this deep root irrigation, and they were there, what, maybe 3-4 months and then went out? But yet they were looking for us to do all the infrastructure? No. Just my thought. And since everybody's had a chance to question and comment, I'm going to call for the vote.
Browner,
Aye.
Johnson,
Nay.
Lees,
No.
Young,
Yay.
Newberry.
No.
Motion failed. Do you wish to make a motion, John?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we fund it for $5,000 a year, as it was, and review it in a year to see if the promotion has changed, and maybe go to the request of 10,000 for the rest of the term. Is that a lot?
Did you get all that, Kelly?
I $5,000 a year and then review in 1 year, but I'm not really sure what you're wanting them, what is.
You wanted to see the efforts that done to promote West Burlington in that time frame. Is that, I believe, what I heard?
The promotional part and the
I would like,
Kathy pretty much said it what I wanted.
I would like the conversations to happen that you were discussing. Does that help
There
you
go.
any?
There you go. Yeah, that'll work. It just didn't come out.
So if you see promotion of the hospital in the brochure, that's something that would show you that intent, or promotion of SCC in the brochure, because those are West Burlington businesses.
Absolutely.
Those would show intent,
Does it have to wait a year?
Featured on.
which are in there,
Everything.
exactly.
Did we have a second?
Oh, yeah.
I'll
Yes.
second.
Okay.
Kathy?
Okay.
I was just trying to
So,
understand.
a couple of things.
Do we have to wait a year?
This is a
I-
one-time capital campaign, so they're trying to fund this campaign, so pushing, maybe we're gonna fund more next year. Yeah, okay, they're not gonna look gift horse in the mouth, but they're trying to fund this campaign now and wrap up that money. And it's odd to me, I have a lot of problems with this thing too, like the housing side, which I've been very involved in. I am not actually in favor of where they ended up, but we as a council sat here and went, here's our goals, and one of them housing, and they're gonna head that up. 2, we want this community survey so we can see where we're at, and they're gonna do that. 3, the business side. Obviously, a huge part of what they're doing for us, ABB, Jeremy Hess bringing those guys in and getting that done. I mean, if that wasn't done, we'd be talking about that place and not the mall. Well, they just got it done. So, to say they're not doing anything for West Burlington, maybe they're not doing a great job coming in here and telling us about it, but there's a ton out here. There's a ton that you go, okay, maybe they're not the one with the shovel, but that hotel motel money is directly from their efforts. The only reason those funds are in our pockets right now to say if we want to give those, if they're filling the hotel up.
So I'm not saying that they're not doing anything for us, because obviously we are seeing those things. But if they're wanting to double our commitment, I would like to see more. So is there a way that I can amend
Yes.
and not wait a year? But let's get some of these conversations going and revisit this other 5 on a quicker timeline then?
Yes, you can certainly amend it. You can ask for a friendly amendment, or you can do a formal second. You would act on that motion and then act on the original motion. One other option, if you could table it to a date certain, ask the chamber to come back and have some of this conversation with them before making a decision, like at the next meeting, and get some input from them on the 23rd and make a decision at that time.
So
That would be another option.
can we continue what the council feels like before I make this amendment? What would we be most comfortable with? More communication with them before we make a?
I want to see the difference, and if the difference is in a promise, I'm okay with that because I will,
And I agree
will,
with your sentiment, but it has to be measurable. So how are we going to measure that?
And it may take more than a year, John.
yeah.
I mean, I want to be heard that this is our priority.
Johnny, are you hooked on the rebranding to include the name? Is that what you're banking on? That's what you're gonna need to see?
I want to see that.
I don't think that's
That's not on the
ever going to
list.
happen.
At this point in time. That's an expensive venture, just,
We are the greater.
Yeah.
Burlington.
We are the greater Burlington.
And greatly benefit from that.
yes.
Absolutely.
And even more than this campaign, they do other things for us
Absolutely.
outside of this campaign.
And it's not perfect. It's not a perfect system. And we are the second city. We are.
We are. We're 15% of the population.
Right.
Okay.
But it's not that they don't do anything for us, and we benefit from everything that they do for our neighbor. Every time they're selling a hotel room here, they got an option to come over here and shop.
Yep.
And honestly, if you build up that downtown, it's only that long. They're gonna have to expand out here with things after the,
You don't have a vibrant downtown, you don't have a vibrant community.
Yeah.
And when I say community, I consider both cities
Only because
that part of
they're
that
there.
community. But the reason that is in there specifically is because of downtown partners.
Which I agree. And we do need an amazing downtown, and we do benefit greatly from that. But when they're done there, they have multiple options. And I want to make sure that they value what our option is next.
I think we need to fund it. I'm gonna say a line I've been holding my tongue on. It feels like maybe some of these questions need to be asked while they were here on what exactly are you doing for us, if you weren't aware of it. Because I feel like there's a lot they're doing. It's not perfect. I don't agree with all of it. Is there more they can do for us? Yes. But
I don't think we're questioning what they're doing for us. I obviously see what they're doing for us. I question if I'm going to double that rate, what more can they do for us? Because doubling is quite a bit of money.
I mean, I was in the housing meetings. Melanie was represented, which one were you in, the business or the?
The business one, I went to 2 of them.
Right. I mean, we were in those meetings. I felt heard on what to do.
It felt like a team. It felt like the area wasn't just, here's Burlington, here's West Burlington. It's when companies were talking about needing employees and they needed places for them to live, they weren't concerned if they were living in Burlington or West Burlington. Just give them a house so I can get them hired and get them doing the
you have
job.
the hospital that's present at all those meetings, the college that is
Yeah.
present at all those meetings,
Yeah.
the school districts that are present at all of those meetings. The bank, there's
100%.
banks that are present at all those meetings that are here in West Burlington.
Yeah.
And yes, on the
Yeah,
tourism side, we do not reap much tourism dollars in our town. We don't really have those facilities here, but we get all the benefits from all those people that come and stay at the Recplex all weekend, and they come here and shop.
They
come here and
absolutely-
stay in our hotels.
They would go to Target, we get that sales tax. They go to Walmart, we benefit from that sales tax.
That's why I thought the way to increase this funding and go to the 50 was to use those dollars directly brought in by that, because they're doing that. So fund it at that level, but pay it out of their own pot. They're the ones bringing it in.
And the survey includes some information, maybe the survey can include some information about the mall and development and potential, what people want to see there to, draw that aspect into it. I don't know how involved we are with deciding what's on that survey, but
They've already emailed to set a meeting about it. They've already sent over that we're going to have a seat on the housing committee, so we'll be represented there.
it's going to cost you like $5,000 just to get your name into that survey is going to be worth it. That's not much in the scope of it.
Now, it is not perfect. It is not. I argued for a long time on the housing side to have that be different than what it is. But it's still one of our main goals, and they're helping drive towards it. It's not perfect, but it's something we want.
So if we fund it for a year and we see improvement, we can fund it for more.
But, I mean, so the commitment form is in there. I mean, this, they have an investment intention. 2024 through 2028, choose your payment, add some notes. But your typical investment, economic development, investment intention, you identify what your funding is going to be over that 5-year period up front, so they have an idea of what they can do with the funding, what funding they have available to work with over that time frame. And that's what they're asking from us, as well as the companies and businesses that they're seeking funding from, is that what are we, as a city, willing to put up towards their initiative for the next 5 years. And they're asking for that commitment today, not next year.
From a funding standpoint, I don't see that it's fair for us to tell them we might change in a year. It's not really fair. My intent with this is to get the conversation going with more of what we need and how to meet those goals. So what would be a good compromise there to do that? I don't disagree with Andy's proposal of where to fund the money from. My only addition to that would be, how do we make sure these conversations are still happening with some of the desires that we have that aren't currently being addressed?
I think it makes a big difference when Greg is at those meetings and talking to people, and you have that more now than you ever have.
I absolutely agree.
You have, people, your faces there asking questions.
Absolutely.
And I think we're in a good place with that now.
Agree.
And I'm sure Greg argues it every time he's down there. And they hear that.
Dell and I meet on a monthly basis, unless something comes up as well.
Ken?
I'm trying to think of a way to formulate your...
Right.
Kathy was mentioning or proposing, and maybe I'm out of order here, but hey, if we'd like them to come back at another meeting, one representative, where we can say, okay, we want to increase this, but we don't feel like, or we're not sure we want to increase. I don't care how we started. But tell us really specifically what's in it for us. If we double our contribution, how are we going to see double our benefit? Talk to us. And just have them come back and talk to us. And they aren't probably going to give us tangible, specific items, but maybe they can. Hey, give us 15, I want 15% coverage in the new booklet that's going to be visitor focused. And on your business booklet, and that's what they're doing. They're going to break that one community guide into two. We want to make sure we get, our 15%. Maybe is that what we need to hear. As I say that, Johnny, I just flipped open one of their promotional things, and I'm trying to go through the businesses who have already committed to there. And the top 3 businesses, F&M Bank, Great River, and Two Rivers. If I'm mistaken, all of them have representation in our community, right? Two Rivers.
Of course,
I'm just looking at what they gave us.
Of course, they have representation.
And these are our
okay?
constituents also.
I'm not saying they don't have representation, but also those are probably some of the biggest funders from us, if you're looking at it that way, to them, not from them to us. If you're wanting to put it that way.
I'm seeing them as
I know.
taxpayers within our community that we represent.
Yeah.
What about a slightly different approach? If you're looking to fund at that higher level, and ask them to come back on an annual basis and report out what they've done each year, and we can indicate all of this information back to them, that we want to see some tangible results on an annual basis. Come in, provide an annual update as part of our commitment to Grow Greater Burlington, and report out on specifics, in as much detail as possible, what's been going on in our community. And hold them, ask them to do that on an annual basis and report out to the West Burlington. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Did you say report to,
Come to council meeting, provide a update, written update, in-person update, and have a conversation with the have a conversation. What's been going on this year? Well, what are we happy with? What are we not happy with? Come back the following year, see if things have improved. But put that commitment up front. If it doesn't work long term, you're probably not going to be funding them.
we're funding the greater Burlington, West Burlington, right?
Greater Burlington.
Greater Burlington or greater Burlington, West Burlington?
Those are hard.
I don't think you're going to win that one. I was
Do you want to be responsible for the cost of rebranding and be on that end of it?
No, we're actually not the only other community in that chamber, too.
Yeah.
right.
Who else is involved in that?
Minneapolis. I don't know, Danville is?
Middletown, Middletown.
Well, there's even some,
I mean,
I
Great
don't
River,
know.
yeah.
I don't know that they technically are.
the county.
And what are they funding at the rate that we are?
Yeah, what does the other cities fund that?
I knew that, and I don't remember it. I found it somewhere when I looked at this. I don't know.
Burlington, what was 7? Oh, how much were they?
It's not in here, I don't think. I
Is
read
in my notes. Over 3 years, was it 75,000 over 3 years? I believe, $25,000 a year.
And what about the communities that are smaller than us?
What's that?
The communities that are smaller than us that are also,
Or
are they funding?
Same size.
I don't know that
I
they.
don't think it goes out that, I
don't
don't think
think
it
they-
goes
I don't think
out
they're
far enough for
included.
anything that's our size.
Well, why don't you can stay
We could find it.
consistent with Burlington and do 10,000 a year for 3 years. I mean, I don't know, that's another option, but.
All right, so to move things along, how about if we vote on your motion? And it'll get defeated, and then someone pull this until we have more information where we can chat with them and get more idea of how much funding every other city is putting on. And then we can ask them specifically what they have in store for us.
I'm pretty sure the other cities don't participate, but we can certainly ask.
I'm not sure about Newfoundland. There's definitely different.
Businesses do, yes. I like the idea of holding them accountable.
I do too. And
They do
for
come here
the $50,000 we've already paid.
That's why I'm like,
Yeah,
how much do we want to argue about this? Because they do come give us an annual report.
Yeah.
The CVB does.
CB,
CVB does.
I don't think the chamber does.
Yeah, I mean, like the chamber does, but the CVB
They
usually
have.
comes every year.
They've been here every year. No, Chamber's been here every year.
Della did a report last year.
yeah, she did.
Yes.
And I feel very, very much that West Burlington is represented in those meetings. Now, if you're not in those meetings, I don't know what you're looking at that you're saying we're not representative, except for I understand you're mentioning the name. But I'm not in those meetings hearing Burlington, 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 and that's it. Now, if I'm in a downtown partners meeting, yeah, but that's what that organization is.
It's a different,
No,
it's
yeah,
a different
no,
vibe when you're there. at
it's
those
not,
meetings.
what are we doing for Burlington, what are we doing for West Burlington, it's what are we doing for the community?
The area.
Every
Yeah.
discussion, I mean, those economic development committee discussions are not about one community or the other, they're just about what's going on in the community as a whole.
Am I allowed to speak? Am I allowed to speak?
Mike, what's your opinion
He
on
doesn't live
this?
out here.
He's a,
If we
we're a
have
paid
so
employee of
many
the city whose
people-
opinion I value.
If we have so many people disagreeing for so long, every year when they come here, why haven't we approached them before now just because of a 5,000? If we haven't been happy with 5,000 and don't think it's been working, how come all these council people have sat here and not
5,000.
confronted Jeremy or whoever's been sitting in this meeting now? I've been sitting here for an hour in a meeting that everybody's been upset for years of and feel like nothing happened. And so now we're stuck here for how long? because no one's opened their mouth till now. Why haven't somebody brought this to somebody's attention long before now?
I can tell you why. Because I did bring it up the last meeting, and she's new, and she wouldn't have had an opportunity, except maybe one time. And it wasn't about, the money raised wasn't the difference. You know, I mean, it was 5,000 already set in the kettle, so that wasn't brought up.
I'm not.
That's why, Mike, you know, and,
I'm not saying that I'm unhappy with what they've done. I can clearly see what they have. I'm saying if I'm going to double the contribution,
But didn't he bring
It
that,
needs to
didn't he
be-
bring that to a meeting? When this contribution was up, this is what we're asking, make your decision. Why didn't we ask then, what more are you gonna do for us if you want double that? Why didn't that conversation happen when they were sitting in the room? I mean, I fully agree, if you all have that attitude, then we need to bring them back to a meeting, and you guys need to have that discussion, whether that's a closed session or a council meeting.
Can't have a closed session, but they were asked that question at the
yeah,
last meeting.
Johnny did ask it. I'm
we
looking for
not-
clarification of how we're going to continue that. How is that going to be monitored? How is it going to be evaluated?
Well, I don't think
What are
we
we
can
doing?
solve that tonight's what I'm saying. Let's make a plan, get them back to another meeting, because we're getting nowhere here.
We're having good discussion, Mike. I wouldn't say we're getting nowhere. It sounds like what we want is them to come back and say, hey, we want to double it, or we don't want to, but tell us what we're going to get more for doubling it. And
think they're gonna
two, how do you measure it? How do we specifically measure it? And I'm of the, it's tough. Unless we say, hey, if we build more places, build more doors, have more, construct new doors, we can say if that happens in West Burlington, we're going to attribute part of that growth to work they've done, Greater Burlington has done. Or, well, I'm just looking at our goals. How does what they're going to do tie into what we set our goals? One is create a positive environment to attract and retain business. What's the measurable for that we can say with? You know, is that open another business, like more business? How do we measure that? Or do we just, or is it a feeling? It just feels good and we have good energy in our community and we like what we're doing. You know, or can we say, hey, we increased the attendance at our 4th of July celebration. Yay, that's because of what they did. Or maybe because our pool is a little better this year than last year and they got more people in the community who went here. I don't know. Or maybe just our hotel motel tax revenue going up. Because if our one hotel in our community, which I believe is only American, if it's booked that much fuller, that's more money for us. If that's the measurable, okay.
And what Andy's proposal is, kind of puts it back on them to make sure that happens. And they continue doing these promotions that raise the money that they're gonna need to get their, the other half of their donation.
Or
In
do
3
we-
years, if you fund it at 10,000 for 3 years, you should be able to see some action in those 3 years on this plan, this partnering for the future campaign that they're gonna work on. I think that's what Burlington's doing, a 3-year commitment.
I believe it's 3 years, 75,000.
Somehow I read that. I forget where. It could have been in the paper. I don't remember.
so the campaign can be 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years, 5 years. Burlington's doing 3.
Yeah, but they want the commitment
They want
of what you're doing.
So what's
minimum, I think.
Burlington committing
For
after
the
3?
5-year program, they committed to $75,000. They're just going to pay it over a shorter period of time.
Yeah.
I see, for the 5,
For the 5.
and they're paying it in 3.
Yep.
You want to amend your motion?
No.
Well,
Now the motion is the $5,000 a year, and then review it after 1 year.
I don't think a year's long enough now.
It'll give me an idea of where they're headed.
Well, what if we give them 10 over 3 years and reevaluate?
I think we're defeating the purpose. Why is,
If they don't have the money to do those things up front, they're not gonna do them. Especially if you're not contributing to it, they're not going to do it.
Can we vote on Johnny's and I'll make a new motion?
I didn't hear what you said, Andy.
I just said, can we vote on Johnny's and then I'll make a new, if it fails, make a new motion.
All right, I'm calling for the vote.
Johnson?
Aye.
Please.
No.
This is the 5,000 and then review it in a year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Johnson?
Aye.
Lees?
No.
Young?
No.
Newberry?
No.
Browner?
No. All right. Motion to approve 40,000, 20 out of TIF. This is total. 20 out of hotel motel, spread over 5 years. Not fund the full 50 amount, just do 40 instead of 50. But we're going down in our TIF funds and pulling the rest out of hotel motel.
So you're saying 40 for 4 years total?
40 for 5 years.
I just spread it over 5.
It's a 5-year program, so you're just paying it over,
Yeah.
So $8,000 a year.
is it 8 a year or is it 10 for the first 4 years?
Let's do 10 at 4 just to make the math easy. Yeah.
Okay.
So 40 grand total instead of 50. Go up from the 25, come down from the 50, but split the funding. So 20 still coming out of hotel motel. We're pulling less out of TIF than we've been in the past. The rest is paid out of that. That's coming from them anyway.
Billy, you got that?
Yeah, was there a second or just a motion still? Okay.
20 out of TIF. 20 out of
25
hotel.
out of TIF.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're actually spending is 20 more out of the,
Raises our spend 15 grand.
You're taking 20 out of TIF and 20 out of hotel motel. Even Steven, split.
and you think that it's represented well.
My plan originally had been to come back and ask council for 50 just for the courts. So to me, we're getting a big discount compared to what I was going to ask for.
Let's do just for
You shouldn't do that.
Again, all out of a hotel motel, but
If you're looking for a specific deliverable, just an idea, and I can show you an example where three that I've generated, but using an outside third party, but the chamber could certainly help us with this, and it's really only staff time. It's not going to take a lot of, it doesn't take dollars, but, and I'll call it an economic development brochure for West Burlington. It's a short, concise document, and I can show you the last two examples that I did, but I worked with an outside third party doing it and a larger staff. So if the chamber were to work with us on an economic development brochure for West Burlington or economic development and tourism brochure, I'm talking a 4-page brochure. It's not huge. It's electronic or paper. You can print it out. And it promotes West Burlington. It's something that we can use as a handout. We can send out to folks. And it's a concrete piece of information. And it got a lot of use. And it doesn't take a lot of, they can do it with their staff and our staff.
you're asking
it's a
me to
con-
print it?
You can.
electronic.
Actually,
We could
I actually handed out a lot of them to people, but I prefer the digital one online.
Well, it could be put
It
at the
can be- it
Iowa
can be
Welcome
both.
Center down at the,
It can be both, but it's an economic development brochure
job
that you send
fair.
out, and it's just focused on West Burlington. They could do one for Burlington too, but it's just it's a nice, tangible piece of information that handed out a lot of copies of. And
I kinda like
people
that.
have found value in the document. And it doesn't take it doesn't take a lot of dollars, it just takes some staff time to put together and somebody that's good with,
And they
Photography,
could hand it out when they
photoshopping.
hand out the others. I mean, they could be in the
Doesn't-
same area.
I can show you, I've got examples of the last ones I did. But it's something tangible, it's something that benefits West Burlington, because it's West Burlington focused, and it doesn't take away from their current efforts, and it fits into their marketing efforts as well. And it's something they could easily do the same thing for Burlington and the county.
Yeah.
It's a very concise document with a lot of information, but it's also, it's well done. and
Professional.
Professional, and it looks good, but it really doesn't, it takes time is all it takes, really. People with the right tools,
Time and talent, huh?
time and talent.
And they have the
I mean,
time.
if you're looking for something tangible, I mean, we can do this anyways. It's on my to-do list anyways. But if you're looking for something tangible for them to do for West Burlington, that's something that we could work with them on.
I like that.
I still have a motion without a second.
You want to amend your motion and get a second? If they do a brochure and
Going. Motion failed, no second.
Can I make a motion to table this and ask them to come back and speak with us again on this topic?
support.
Motion with support. Have them come back and have them chat with us on how they were gonna be able to promote us better than what they have or something of that nature.
I
Give
just
us
want to be,
tangible.
I just want to feel like we're a relevant part of the conversation. And those of you that sit in those meetings, that's great, and you feel that. The rest of us are obviously lacking that. So how can we show that to us more?
Does that have to be at a council meeting, or could it be at a work
Maybe
session?
that's the answer.
What would be the better?
Obviously, there's a disconnect.
We could do a work session, but I've got several to schedule here.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have a whole lot for the next meeting, if they can make it.
I don't think next meeting would be a good one for that to happen.
I'm sorry?
The next meeting in,
23rd?
27th.
27th, I mean. Yep.
but we're having,
Oh, the 2080? Yes.
that wouldn't be good.
But the one after that. Again, a work session, otherwise we do it at a work session.
What if we did it at 5 ahead of that meeting
Huh?
on 27th?
I'm good.
Is that
With
what's
me.
your schedule?
I'll make it work.
We have a vote, please, roll call. And we're voting on tabling this, set up a work session with them at 5 o'clock on the 27th, if they would love to come and chit chat with us. 27th at 5. Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Newberry,
Aye.
Browner,
Aye.
Oh, motion passed.
Aye.
Oh, Johnson, hurry up. Moving onward to item number 3 at 8:09. Consider resolution adding Brian Newberry to volunteer fire department.
Motion approved.
Support.
Motion with support. Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Young,
Aye.
Newberry,
Abstain.
Browner,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees.
Aye. Item number 4 is consider the first reading of an ordinance amending provisions pertaining to the fiscal management.
Motion of support.
Support.
Motion with support. Any questions or comments?
These are just updating with new legislation to update our code to match the state code, so.
Thank you. No questions.
Roll call?
Newberry,
Aye.
Crowner,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young.
Aye.
Motion approved. Item number 5 is to consider the first reading of an ordinance amending provisions pertaining to liquor licenses and cigarette and tobacco permits.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion with support. Any questions or comments?
Greg, you want to give us a little bit on that?
It's the same thing.
Same
as
thing,
state
these are just
code, so-
updating the state code. Each of these ordinances meet state code. That's all we're doing tonight. These are required
Yeah.
changes.
Okay. But did the code change? I mean, is there,
Yeah, I put the copy of what
Yep.
it is now and what it was before in your packet.
I thought maybe the public might want to hear what the changes are.
Oh, I need to read them all. FYI.
How about we read it at the next one? We can read it, how about we read it at the next one?
Roll
That's
call
okay.
vote.
Out.
That's okay.
Go back and look.
Kelly, can you give me a roll call vote?
Crowner,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Newberry.
Aye.
Motion approved.
This one's not crossed out.
Item number 6 is to consider a resolution approving the final pay application for Phase 2 on the Mount Pleasant Street project, but I don't have any numbers on my screen.
Did you get the information from?
You don't either.
I don't either, sorry. There's no attachment.
We'll push it to the next meeting. We're waiting on information.
I have it.
We have the information,
Yes,
but
I have it, I didn't have.
it's not on there. So,
I have it in the email here if you want to talk about it, but I don't have it. I didn't realize it was added on there. I was gone.
Do we want to just put it on for the next meeting?
I can read it to you. real
actually,
quick.
if you wouldn't mind, if we could read it and take action on it, we want to get this project closed out.
Is that why
Matt was late in getting the information to us.
This will not, I mean, we'll still have to do a resolution to approve the project. Are
Right.
you wanting to do that tonight also?
You know, the resolution approving the final pay application, you don't have it on that for tonight.
No,
This is just the final
This is a
payout.
change order number 1, which is a decrease of $15,702. Removal, it has to do with, removal of payment,
Seating.
seating, price adjustment for liquidated damages. So that reduces the project from $720,247.86 to $704,545.86. So that's change order number 1. And then Matt's letter says, enclosed for your review and approval are change order number 1 and pay us at number 3 for final quantities for Norris Asphalt Paving Company related to the West Mount Pleasant Street resurfacing project. Change order 1 reflects removing the replacement of Public Works Drive from the project, class 13 excavation to core out 3. Granular medians to allow for the proper thickness of HMA overlay, and the assessment of liquidated damages. Pay estimate number 3 represents final quantities used for construction of the project. Engineers have reviewed the pay estimate and find it to be in agreement with the work that's completed. They recommend approval of pay estimate number 3 in the amount of $8,827.64.
I'd recommend approval if you want tonight. We can put it on the next meeting, but we still have to do the final resolution accepting the project, and that'll be included. I'd like to be able to get the pay app submitted to the state of Iowa. We were late in receiving these back from engineering firm. If you're not comfortable with it, we can push it to the next meeting.
We're fine. I'm fine.
It's
there a
a net
motion?
decrease in the contract overall.
A motion for approval.
Support.
Motion with support. Do you have any comments, Mike?
Just need it closed. It's all done, and I agree with those numbers, and that's what we came to.
Roll call.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Newberry,
Aye.
Crowner.
Aye.
I will send those documents out to you just so you can see them.
You attach it to the agenda. too.
Motion
Yeah, I'll
approved.
attach them and I'll attach them on the agenda.
Thank you.
I apologize for that.
Righty. We don't have any other citizens' inquiries? At this time, we're going to go into a closed session in accordance with Iowa Code, Chapter 21.5,
We still need this closed
1-I,
session.
to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, or discharge is being considered when necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to that individual's reputation and that individual's request a closed session. Motion to go in closed session.
A motion, we go into, so moved.
Motion with support.
Got that, Kelly? All right.
We need a roll call.
All in favor?
All in
Aye.
favor, say aye.